All right, welcome everyone to Advanced Microsoft Excel. We're glad to have you all here today, and we're going to be talking about a number of things and going over some exercises that correspond with the handbook that I have sent to you in a PDF form that's color and has easy to follow steps, numbered steps. And here's some of the things that we're going to be covering today. One of the first things we're going to do is do a sort. We're going to talk about how sorts work and how you can compound sorts, and you can even make a custom sort. And we're going to show the relationship between the two. There's two different ways to do sorts, and it's a little bit counterintuitive because if you do three sorts the regular sort way, when you go to a custom sort, you have to do it exactly backwards to get the same result. A little strange, but we'll show you that. Conditional formatting. Kind of cool, a little bit busy when you start making cells, have all these different colors or symbols or things like that, but there are some real world practical applications like duplicate ID numbers or something like that. And so we're going to show an example of that today. Grouping is wonderful. Some of you may have these giant spreadsheets that you're working on for your site or your district office with all this information on it. And you might be hiding various columns to kind of shrink down the page so you can see the things that are most important to you. Hiding and unhiding is a pain in the backside. Grouping is a far better way to do it, and I'm going to share with you how to do that. Locking cells and worksheets, a little strange in Excel, if you ask me, the way that they do it, but we're going to do a demonstration of that. Also, someone in the district once upon a time said, hey, we've got these data on multiple worksheets within our workbook, and we want to consolidate all those worksheets onto a new master worksheet so that we can do analysis of the data from one worksheet to the next. How do you do that? Well, we have an exercise for you today that will show you exactly how to do that. And then VLOOKUP is something that's used throughout the district, and somebody requested that, so we have an example of what that is and how it works. The V stands for vertical. And there is an HLOOKUP out there. I've never tried that, but usually we're dealing with columns with data that goes down the page. So VLOOKUP is what we're going to share. In relation to consolidating data analysis from multiple pages, we're also going to show you what sparklines are and column sparklines and how you can make a physical representation of the data, a visual representation perhaps is a better way to say it. And that's kind of a cool little way to do it without having a ginormous chart that takes up so much room. You can simply within a small cell show some trends, some lines of what things are doing when things go up or they go down. Watch window, somebody asked about that and said, hey, I heard there's a way that no matter which worksheet you're on in this workbook of say 25 different tabs, different worksheets in it, I want to be able to have a window open so I know when X, Y, or Z happens, and that watch window will indicate to me what's happening. So we're going to give a demonstration of that. When you're building formulas or actually, I'll say this differently. When you come to a site or to a district office, a lot of times there's someone that's been there for a long time. Maybe someone just retired and they've got all kinds of formulas on this worksheet, and you might be a little bit new to formulas and worksheets and how things work. And you're like, okay, where does this formula go? How does it work? There's actually a easy for you to say, there's a visual representation that you can do to show where a formula is getting its information from, and then where that formula or the data in that formula might be kicking out to the next formula. Kind of cool. We'll show you that. Custom tables, we'll get into that. Real easy to do. Pivot tables and pivot charts. There's a number of departments within the district, and I haven't heard from a school site yet that's doing pivot tables, but perhaps they are. In fact, I will tell you that I was asked a long time ago to start sharing pivot tables because certain departments are using that. And so I had to learn the pivot table thing. And every time I teach this, and we're going to do it today, I will just tell you that this is a table on steroids. This is the hypercar of tables. This is a Maserati or a Lamborghini. But I have never had anyone come back, and this is my challenge to each of you, never has anyone come back and said, oh, hey, you covered pivot tables. Well, here's what our department does, or here's what our school site does. This is how we use it. Please, if in the future you find a pivot table real world example, you can send it to me. And as far as like, if it's students or something like that, I can easily go in and scramble all the names and do things like that, and make it so there's no private information for anyone anywhere. But if I have a real world example of it, I can copy that or just create another one that kind of mimics the pivot table that you're using in your department or your school. And then we can use that real world example. So I've just kind of made one up based on a pretend school that we have data for that we've created, and we'll show you what that is. So that's really slick. And then flash fill. Wow, I cannot say enough about this. This is machine learning, AI. If you've come to our intro class for Excel, or if you've been to our Google Sheets class, we talk about formulas, we talk about functions, we talk about manipulating data, taking a single column's data and then splitting it out into 2 more columns using formulas and functions. Well, heck, you don't have to do the formulas or the functions if you're in Excel. Not Sheets yet, because it's not powerful enough. That's just a nice little Audi car. It'll get you where you're going. You'll even feel comfortable as you're going. But if you want to get there fast, we're in our hypercar that we're going to call Microsoft Excel. And I can't wait to show you those examples. So that's what we're going to be covering today. And so buckle up and get ready, because we're going to get going, and we're going to be going fairly. We've got this workbook that's called Mr. J's Advanced Excel Exercises with a date there. And then we have all these tabs down below, and each one of these tabs is a different worksheet. And some of the data from one page to the next looks similar. And there's other things that are there. And these are all exercises that we have set up to be able to demonstrate various things. And we're going to be covering quite a few things today. So this is kind of important. There's our pivot table example and a sandbox. That's just an extra thing. Not sure why I put that in there. Once upon a time I did that. But anyway, we're going to be starting today in the very first worksheet, which is enrollment by date. And by the way, there's always so many tricks. So here we are in the first one. Did you know that you can hold down the control key? And this might be on one of those pages. I'm not sure where I learned this, but hold down that control key, and then in between your number keypad and your QWERTY keyboard, above typically where the arrows, the right, left, up, down arrows are, you have a home and an end button, a delete key, but there's also a page up and a page down. So if you hold the control key down and you hit page up, that little button there, nothing happens because we're in the far left side of our workbook. But if you hold down the control key and you do the page down button, one tab or worksheet at a time, you scroll to the right. So that's pretty helpful. So now that we're somewhere to the right, then obviously the control up is going to work, and that will just simply take us back. Each tap will take us back, and a couple quick taps will quickly help you navigate back and forth. So in the event that you have far more tabs than you have space for here, you don't want to have to just be clicking back and forth trying to get those little ellipses to find what you're looking for. So that's an easy way to do it. So there's your first keyboard shortcut tip of the day. All right, so let's take a look at this. If you've been to our classes before, this should look familiar. These are pretend students with pretend data at a pretend school. And how large is this school? Well, let's use another keyboard shortcut, Control End, E-N-D. It's right next to the page down on mine above the arrow keys. And that'll take us down to the end. And we see that the last student is Sarah Zuniga. This must be in alphabetical order. Maybe it's not. But anyway, we do have a header at the top with descriptions. So it looks like there's 473 students in this pretend school. And so to get back, I can sit there and scroll for a long time, or use a keyboard shortcut, Control Home, takes us right back up to the top. So this is the first one that we're going to be working on today. And we're just going to do some sorts. All right. Couple things about sorting. When you're sorting something, and we're talking about making it in alphabetical order, either from A to Z or Z to A, or if we're dealing with numbers, it would be like from the lowest number to the highest number, or in reverse. We have the ability to sort in those ways, but let's talk about that. You can actually sort one column and then sort another and then sort another, and you are in effect compounding those sorts. But before we get started with that, just know that you cannot do that to every column, or let me say, you can't compound multiple columns if the data doesn't support that. What are we talking about? If we see here in column B, we have these last names. It goes A, M, A, and then L down here. So that's not alphabetized, and neither is the first names, right? If we alphabetize, and I'm going to do this right now for this column, this is part of our exercise, and I'm going to go up here to sort and filter, and it says sort it A to Z, and the little tip window says lowest to highest, just kind of because it's the same look for when you're doing numbers, so that's why that's there. That's what we want to do. And if you're in Google Sheets, they skip this next step, but when we click on this right here for column B that is selected, we want to sort that out by last name. Microsoft always puts up this little dialog box called a sort warning, and it basically says, hey, just in case you weren't paying attention, this data right here in this cell B2 has data to the right of it and also data to the left. It looks like, is what sorry, I got Google in the brain. It looks like Microsoft is saying that this data is part of that. So do you want to expand the selection when we alphabetize this column? Do you want to make sure that everything to the right and to the left of each one of these values or each one of these cells, does it expand the selection? And the answer is yes. So it's kind of silly, and I've never seen a reason not to do this. So every single time this pops up, by default, it says expand the selection, and absolutely we want to do that. So we're going to. All right, so now we know that Acosta, Camilla, Adams, Andrew, these are the data right here that pertain to these various names. All right, so we just sorted our first column. We're going to sort a total of 3. But before we go, I just want to point out that, as we said before, some sorts, multiple sorts are impossible. So think about for a moment, if we put the last names in alphabetical order, can we also compound that alphabetizing by also putting the first names in alphabetical order? Well, let's just give it a try since we can do that. Expand the selection, of course. So when we put the first names in alphabetical order, then that pertains to various last names, and obviously that's not going to work. So we can only do one or the other. So just pointing that out. I don't want to have this sort because this is the one we're going to do in our example here. So I'm just going to hit undo. Or if I had my hands on the keyboard, then I could just do Control Z to do that. All right, so now we have last names. There's a lot of A's, and then if we went to the bottom, Control End, E-N-D, there's Sarah Zuniga, the last one, no problem. Let's go back to the top, Control H, or Control H, Control Home, or Home key to get us back up there. All right, what's the next one we're gonna do? Well, let's sort by grade level and see what happens. So again, we just sorted this one. We're gonna go to grade level, and we're gonna go over here, and we're gonna do smallest to largest, lowest to highest. Expand the selection, indeed. If you're from middle or high school or somewhere in the district not familiar with elementary schools, grade level 0 is simply our kindergartners, because number 1, obviously goes to first graders. So that's what that is. So here we have alphabetical order, A's and B's and C's, and eventually down there D's, E's, and F's. And those are all of our kindergartners. And if we scroll down here a little bit, this is quite a large school we have here. And then when the first graders start, we see that the last kindergartner was a Z, the end of the alphabet, and then it starts alphabetizing again. So we've compounded the last name and the grade levels. Fantastic. So scrolling back up to the top, and now maybe we want to split it up to where we have splitting up the male and female. So again, we just simply select gender column, and we go up to sort and filter, and we just do A to Z. Same thing we did before. And now you can see why I enjoy so much the Google thing that doesn't ask you this. It just automatically assumes that everything's going to work out. Since F comes before M in the alphabet, so that's how that's working. So again, we still see alphabetical order, A, B, C, D, and so on. We see the grade levels, 0's first for being the lowest number, and then we see female. So let's scroll down and see if we can see some, So in this order that we did, it's showing apparently all of the kindergartners in alphabetical order, and then it starts over for first grade in alphabetical order, but it's all the female all the way down, and we'll assume then that it gets all the way to 5th grade, and when it gets to the end, we go back to the kindergartners, and then there's all of the males, and again, in alphabetical order. So we just compounded that. So what did we do? We did that first, we did last name, followed by grade level, followed by gender. So we're going to do this a few times today. I'm just going to hit undo a few times until that goes gray. Oh, I had spread that out. That's why I went back that far. All right, I shouldn't have sent you a file that didn't have enough room to show what was there. I apologize. But back to enrollment by date is where we started. There's no more sorts because we just backed up and undid those sorts so that we can do a custom sort. So again, we did last name, grade level, gender. And now in this custom sort, I'm going to show you that to get the same result, you have to do it backwards. But you can do custom sorts, and we're going to share with you how to do that. So we go over here to sort and filter, and there's a custom sort option. And then, oh boy, did I click? I thought I clicked the, hold on, let me just click over here, make sure I clicked on the right one. Custom sort, there we go. Now we have the sort, we have the custom sort dialog box, if you will. All right, so let's see, we can put this over here. So we did a last name, grade level, gender. Now to get the same result, I'm just demonstrating, we have to do it backwards. So sort by student number, no, we want to do gender. So gender is the first one, and then we're going to add a level. All right, and this is just cell values, and in this case, letters or numbers if we're dealing with the grade level. And then there's the order, it's kind of by default. Oh, and by the way, make sure you have this box checked because yes, we have a header at the top and we don't want to alphabetize the header. Right, so gender followed by then grade level. So we simply pick that, grade level, and then we hit one more. And then of course we're going to do last name. And again, this is exactly backwards of the way we did it the first time. And give me 1 second. I have to check something. Sorry about that. I had to take care of a Zoom thing real quick. So again, it's this custom sort is going to have the same result as what I'm sharing with you, but you have to do it backwards. I'm not sure exactly why that is, but let's take a look. So when we do that, again, we see that it's alphabetized over here in last name from A to Z. And then we see our little kindergartners, all the zeros, and then we see the female, F comes before M, and sure enough, all the way to 5th grade as we saw before. So it does that. I'm not sure why it sorts that way exactly opposite, but just know that when you're doing the custom sort and you're trying to sort many different things, it's a little bit different than if you're just doing it the long way by hand. Just simple thought. So let's go ahead and undo that and just get back to our original spot. So that's our sorting and custom sorting. So next we're going to do conditional formatting. All right, so conditional formatting. This is an interesting thing, and there are real world applications for it, and we're going to do that after we sort of demonstrate what the capabilities are of conditional formatting. So we're actually going to use the grade levels, grades kindergarten through 5th or 0 through 5. And so I'm going to select column F where it has grade level. And then right here on the Home tab ribbon, past the font group, alignment group, number group, we see conditional formatting, and we click on that. And there's lots of different options. And so if we hover over things, we can kind of get a general idea what it is, highlight cell rules. So again, we're dealing with numbers 0 through 5. So if we want to just see 4th and 5th graders, we could do greater than, we set up a rule that says greater than 3, and we'll only see 4th and 5th. Or of course we could do less than, or we could say, we only want to see, you know, there's different options here of what you can do. And then down at the bottom here, it says duplicate values. All right, well, that's something we're going to use in just a little bit. top bottom rules. This is probably more to do with just numbers and finances, and some, maybe your department will use that. I can't think of a good one for schools, so we're going to go to here, the next one. So again, we're in our hypercar. It's called Microsoft Excel, and unlike Google Sheets, it has great preview capabilities. So again, we have column F selected, all of our grades, and we're here in the data bars, and if we hover over the different ones, we get to see what it looks like before we actually commit to it, which is pretty cool. And then of course we have this little description of what's happening, and we can see how it's representing it. So I'm going to go ahead and select this one. It's a little easier on the eyes than some of the other colors. And after I select that, I'll just click over here and get away from it. So we see fifth graders go all the way across. First graders only go 1/5. Zero or kindergartners look like that, and so on and so forth. So that's a way you could represent your data. The number's still there, the actual grade level is still there, but maybe in this application, this is easier for you for some reason. You want to go find a kindergartner, there's no blue in it. To me, that doesn't really work, but oh well. So I'm going to go ahead and select that again, and let's take a look at some other ones. You can compound these. So there's also color scales. You can choose these. To me, it looks like reggae. That's awesome. There's these different ones that you can do. You can make them monochromatic, just different shades or whatever. But yeah, we'll skip that one for now. And down here, something even more bizarre, we have these different symbols. And depending on which one we click on will make more sense. So something to consider. This one has 3 triangles. I'm sorry, it says 3 triangles there, but that's not true. It has this kind of a triangle, that kind of a triangle, and then this little bar here. And if you look over in column F, where we're seeing the preview, that's all there is. So if you have 0 through 5th grade, that's 6 different grade levels. And if you only have 3 symbols, then obviously you're limited. So this one might make a little more sense because there's 5, although some of them are going to be duplicated. In fact, if we look over in column F, the 5th grader and the 4th graders have the exact same symbol. Why? Because there's 6 different categories we have as far as grades, and there's only 5. And so that's certainly the limitation of what's available. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on one just to set it, and then move over here. And again, that's kind of silly, but maybe a combination of something might be helpful to you, or maybe to distinguish the male from female. Maybe you could do some conditional formatting, but that's conditional formatting. Let's go for a real world example. All right. So someone once upon a time, let's go ahead and undo that, those 2 ones, so that it looks more normal. Once upon a time, someone said in a course that, hey, Mr. J, what's the fastest way to find a duplicate number so that we can change that? Because sometimes in this list of hundreds of students or a couple thousand students, we might have a duplicate number somewhere, and they might belong to different students. So what's the best way to find that? Well, we can use our conditional formatting to do that. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to our conditional formatting first, and we have column A selected, and the highlight cell rules, we go all the way down to here where it says duplicate values. And so what we're doing with the duplicate values dialog box is we're going to tell our worksheet what to look like when there's a duplicate, in this case, column A student number that we're trying to do that. So yes, we're looking for the duplicate. And then when we find those values that are duplicate, what do you want us to do with it? You want us to do a light red fill with a dark red text? Oh, that would look cool. We have yellow fill, green, there's a couple different ones. You can just put a border around it. You can just make the text red, or you can go down here and do a custom format. All right, and check this out. Formatting cells, you have all these different options. We're gonna kick it up a notch and make it real easy to spot. So we're gonna go to the Fill tab, and we're gonna pick a color. And to me, highlight's probably the easiest one. Oh yeah, so if we find those duplicate numbers with the yellow like that, it'll be easy to see it in a cell. So that's pretty cool. So let's go ahead and click OK now that we've selected that. And so there it is. What are we going to do with our conditional formatting? Any duplicate cell or duplicate number in this case is going to have that custom format or that yellow. All right. So now, still having this selected here, we can go over to our sort and filter button, and we can do a custom sort. Really? Expand the selection? Okay, we can do that. So what are we're actually in the right column. We're in student ID. That's the one we want to be in. And are we going to sort on the values like the letters or numbers? No, we're going to do it on cell color. Okay, so do you want us to sort it by put all the ones that have no color together? Well, no, that's kind of where we are already. Let's go ahead and hit this button here and say, oh yeah, we want all the yellow ones. And where? We want them on top. And by the way, always make sure if you have a header at the top, as we do up here, that that box is selected. And so watch what happens over in column A. Bam. So we did the conditional formatting first. That was the first step. And we did it to say if there's any duplicate numbers, we want them to be yellow. In fact, I'll click away so you can see just how yellow they are. And in fact, I'll click over here so we could read the rest of it. So apparently, this is the same student, same birth date, same everything, same grade level. And so there was a different spelling that was used. Maybe different clerks entered the data, or simply a slip of the fingers on the keyboard or whatever. But there's a duplicate number, and we don't want that duplicate number in there. We just want to have one. And so we were able to do a custom sort and send it to the top. We did that. We can establish then which one is the correct one. And if this is the one up here, that's the one that needs to be erased, then boom, we can just delete that and it's done. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and undo those last two steps just to get us back to where we were when we started. All right, moving right along. Let's take a look. We may save some more desk space here. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about grouping. And this is really slick. And it's, again, all of these things are described in your handbook, step by step on how to do it. But it's pretty straightforward. So we're just going to dive into this. And here we are. We've got this great big pretend school. We've got student ID numbers, last name, first name, full name, birthday, grade level, so on, some entry code, descriptions, the last school name where you were, and then the last school grade. There's all kinds of information that's on this, but maybe we're always having to scroll back and forth because we have so many columns. A lot of school sites have worksheets that big. And so let's see if we can get rid of some of the things that are extra. So student ID number and names are probably something that's important. So maybe we want to be able to group together. It's kind of like hiding, but it's a better way to do it. Columns B and C. And so if we go to we're on our home tab ribbon right now, but if we go to the data tab ribbon and we go over to the right, then we're going to find all the way at the end outline where it says group. And all we have to do is click group and watch what happens. Got a little more space up here. We have this bar thing that kind of sticks over into column D, but you can see the dot above B and C. So that tells you those are the two that are grouped. And so what do we do with that? Hit the minus sign. Now it goes straight A to D. So you kind of get the idea how this works. Hit the plus sign and there you go. So that's great. So birth date, grade level, gender, that's all pretty good. But maybe we don't need to see entry date, entry code, entry description, and some of these other ones. So let's just go ahead and left click and drag across a few and then go up and say group. And there you go. And when it's actually off the page, not helpful. I'm going to use another one of my tricks real quick. Control and roll the mouse wheel. Let's try that again. Control, roll the mouse wheel. Come on. Oh boy. There we go. I want to be able to see that a little bit easier. Did I get it? No, not quite. One. All right. So I just wanted to be able to see all of the columns across there so we can demonstrate how this works. So again, it looks like it's over column L. It's not, because we can see the little dots that are there. But if I hit the minus sign, I can collapse that part. I can collapse them both at the same time or just one at a time. But then we have these numbers over here, 1 and 2. One of them does that, and the other one does that. So if we want to expand and contract all of them at the same time, because again, you might have 15 different groups that go along there. So there you go. And you can also, I will tell you, you can also do the grouping down below. So let's say for some reason, This actually isn't alphabetized, but if I had part of it here alphabetized and I wanted to cover all of the A's, I could simply select, all of whatever that group is. Maybe that's all the kindergartners or something like that, and then do the same thing and say group. And now we have the same thing on the other side where we can expand that. And if that were kindergartners, then they'd all be gone. And we could maybe do that for all the different grades. And so you could open up all of the grades at the same time, or you could collapse some of them and just open a few. So again, you have those different options of moving data around or hiding different columns or rows. And so when you are done with that, or you want to make it go away, I can hit undo, and that's one way to do it. The other way is to simply just go back, and in this case it's H, I, J, and K, because we don't see a dot over the other one. And you just drag across there and then just say ungroup, and it makes that go away. And so we'll do that. We'll go ahead and ungroup that, kind of get it back to where it was. And looks like I still have one over here. I'm just gonna, let's see. It's all the way down to 12. I know that because there's a dot there. And I just hit ungroup. Oh, I did not want to hit that one. Sorry. Cancel. Going too quick. Ungroup. There we go. Now we're back to normal. All right. The next thing we're going to demonstrate, again, something that's covered in your handbook, is locking cells, protecting worksheets. All right. So to me, this has always been a little bit confusing, but there's just some basics to it. And again, if you're on a worksheet that someone else made or multiple people use, and they might be locking certain cells that you're unaware of, and so on and so forth. Well, here are just the basics to kind of give you a little heads up on how this works. All right, so again, we're on the enrollment by date worksheet, and on the home tab ribbon, let's get on the home tab ribbon. All right, all the way down to, where is it? Format cells. We have an opportunity to do some locking of cells and all of that. So first, let's pick some. If I wanted to, I could select all of these columns and say, we don't want anyone to be able to make any changes. In fact, this is my responsibility within this department or at the school site, and I'm in charge of this. I don't want anyone to change any of this without my permission. So you can lock down all of that. And again, that goes all the way down to the last data entry at the bottom. But for our example, we're just going to pick something. We're going to come over here and maybe do right here in column D and just show you that we can, let's see, I'm going from 6 to 16. That might be easy to remember. And we're going from D to H, full name to entry date. All right. So then we go over here to our cells. Again, we're on the home tab ribbon. Here's the cells group. And we go to format all the way down to the bottom. And sometimes when you do this, this is already has like a little box around it. It's been selected. I'll show you what that looks like. So sometimes it's a good idea to kind of like undo whatever's been done on there before. But in this case, we should be good. So here it is. It looks like it says the cell is locked. All right. But if you look over here, it says you must turn on protect sheet in order for this feature to work. Aha. So if you think you're just locking it just by clicking that, and sure enough, there's a little symbol there, a box around it says, hey, this isn't play. It doesn't work yet until you do this. And then you get your protect sheet dialog box. And this is really important. Password to unprotect sheet. If you put in a password, and we're not going to, for our example today, we're just going to leave it blank, which means that's the password. Blank makes it easy. But if you forget what that password is, it's very hard to go around that. If you've got some programming experience, I did find a way once online, allows you to go in there and you can actually get rid of that code that's protecting those cells. So for our example, again, we're just going to leave it blank, and that's in effect our password. All right, so let's take a look down here. Allow all users of this worksheet to select lock cells, select unlock cells. Interesting. So maybe we want them to be able to select the unlock cells, but we don't want to allow them to select the lock cells. So you have some options here. And this is kind of cool because what you can do is just say, well, whoever uses this, certain things are locked down, but other things aren't. And there's some options there. That's kind of cool. And you can experiment with that. But for our purposes, we're going to allow all the users to select unlock cells, but they cannot select lock cells. So let's see what that looks like. So we click OK, and let's see where we were. So again, remember we did from 6 to 16, and we did from D to H, I believe. So any one of those I try to click on, I can't until I get outside of another area or the locked area. So you can see that by using those options, you can let people know that, hey, these are locked down. You can't do anything with it. You can't select it, can't copy it. You can't do anything to it. So that's pretty cool. So let's go ahead and do this in reverse then. What do we have to do? So this is where it gets a little bit confusing. Our choices, whenever something's grayed out like that, you're not set up to do it just yet. But let's try unprotect sheet. And when we look down, let's see if we're over here in D6. And we still can't select it. Isn't that interesting? So we've already unprotected the sheet, but now we've got to go back and we've got to do this. And so let's see how this is going to work. All right, so as simple as that. So you might have thought that you had to go from D6 all the way down to H16 and then do that, but and again, it doesn't really show you what you're doing. So to me, it's always been a little bit confusing, but just know that you can lock down one cell, or you can lock down 12 different sections on that one worksheet, or the entire worksheet. And then you get to choose whether individuals can click on it or not click on it or do a whole host of other things. So that's just a quick jump into protecting worksheets and locking cells. And again, to me, it's a little counterintuitive, but oh well. All right, so this is the first time we're actually going to close down Excel workbook that we've been using. And this is just a reminder to you, if you want to keep your practice workbook with all of these different worksheets down here in its original form, so you can go back and do things over and over if you want to practice or whatever, then you can either make a copy of all this and have one that you can tweak and have the original that stays the same. Or what I do is when I get out of here, it always says, hey, you haven't saved anything since you've been working for the last half hour. Do you want to save it? Absolutely not. And that way it goes back to its original look. So the next one we're going to open up is this one called Advanced Excel Consolidate and Sparklines for a couple activities we're going to do. So double click on that. All right, so we are going to try out the consolidate feature. And again, this was someone in the district and some department said, hey, is there a way to take data that's on multiple sheets and somehow create a new sheet and then combine all that data so it can be analyzed and looked at and all that? And the answer is yes. Again, we're in our hypercar. We can do some really slick stuff. Haven't seen this feature available in Google Sheets yet, but maybe one day it will. So it should have just opened up to 2015, so our examples. And by the way, in your handbook, I noticed that I think it says 2013 in the dates. It's the same idea. You just, when you're doing the steps, just realize that we have a more updated, worksheet that we're working on. So let's use our trick. So we're in 2015. Let's just take a look at it first. So here we have the year 2015, and we have, this is a very basic thing, just so we're not focused on all the details of the numbers and everything, but looking at just data analysis. So we have printer paper, office and classroom supplies, custodial supplies, 3 different categories. And in 2015, the budget for this was 11% for printer paper, 75% for office and classroom, and 14% for custodial supplies, making up a total of 100%. So again, I realize this is kind of a silly example of data, but it illustrates the point of how to be able to consolidate, because when we go to the next tab, 2016, it looks pretty much the same, except for the numbers are different. In 2016, instead of 11, I believe it was, now it's 15% printer paper, followed by 75 for the classroom supplies and 10% for custodial. All right, so I'm going to leave my mouse up here. And remember, if you hold down the control key and you do your page up key, then it'll take us back to 2015 or page down, and we can scroll all the way across there. So I'm going to go back to 2016. There's the numbers we just saw. 2017 has different numbers in there. 2018 again has different numbers, and 2019. All right, so now you're kind of familiar with this workbook, and all that you see are just 5 different pages representing 5 different years with 3 basic categories of expenses. Instead of just numbers, we simply have percentages of the budget that go into that. There you go. So make sure you're on 2019, because we're going to create a new master sheet where we're going to consolidate everything. How do we do that? If you're on 2019, then we simply click the plus sign. All right, and we've opened up a brand new workbook, or worksheet rather. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. And if you come to our intro class, the fastest way to rename something is to double click on it. And we just type out master, because this is where all of our data is going to go. And I just simply click anywhere and it will set master. But what I'd like you to do is in your handbook, it'll tell you to go to cell B2 and select it. And now we're going to be doing some selecting. So here we go. We have to go to the data tab ribbon, and currently we're on the home tab ribbon. So we go down to the data tab ribbon, and then it says that we need to go down to the data tools group. So we're looking for the data tools group. There it is. And this is kind of scrunched in there, but we're not sure what all these symbols are. But again, remember, if you hover over something, you get the little screen tip that pops up. And so if you look around and, hey, look, there's flash fill. We'll be talking about that later. And we look at this one here, consolidate. That happens to be it. So again, even though maybe it doesn't look like consolidate, that's what that one is. And if we take the time to read it, it's talking about taking data from different worksheets and then consolidating it all into one. And that's certainly what we want to do. So we're going to go ahead and with our cursor, having selected cell B2, now on the data tab ribbon in the data tools group, we're going to click on consolidate. There we go. So let's take a look at this real quick. We have our consolidate dialog box. And the first thing is the function. What is it we're doing here? And if you remember from our intro classes, sum is adding things up. And that's actually the one that we want to keep at this point, is sum. All right. And then we have a reference box down here. We have the ability to browse and go look for something, references that we can add or delete. Something that's important is down below. It says use labels in top row. Remember, we had the year that was there. And then in the columns, we had the different categories. So we want to make sure both of those are checked. And we don't need to check this other one. So the next thing is, with sum selected up here, these 2 boxes checked, then we're going to click in the reference field. And so if we are very familiar with Microsoft Excel, we can just start typing out the data that we need to put in there, the references, I should say, and it would do it. Well, we're new at this, so all we got to do is now go back to 2015, and you'll notice when I clicked on that, the apostrophe 2015 apostrophe followed by an exclamation point, that's describing this worksheet. So what of it? What is it we're trying to grab here? And so your handbook will just tell you to simply go up to A1, left click, hold, and drag down to B5. And then here we see $A, $1, and then if you've been to other classes, you know that a colon represents the range. So it's from A1, where we clicked, range all the way to B5. Why are there $signs in there? That's just the way that the programmers made it. So now that we have that correct, and we can see that the dancing green ants are going around those fields that we're interested in, those cell ranges, then we're just going to say add. All right, so here's where we're building out our consolidating set that we're working on. So then the next thing is, we got 2015, we're going to want to work on 2016. And so look, it's already anticipating, saying, is this what you're trying to do? And sure enough, it kicked up the exact thing that we want. And we want to add that now to the 2015 down here. So we go ahead and add it. So now we have 2015 and we have 2016. And if you're following along, 2017 is the next one we want to do. The reason it's slow like this is because maybe in 2017, you had a third category. A fourth category. instead of printer paper, office and classroom supplies and custodial supplies, maybe there was another thing in there for, I don't know, writing implements, pens or something like that. Something, I don't know, come up with another one. And so maybe we want to increase this range. Instead of A1 to B5, it might be A1 all the way down to B6 or B8 or something like that. Just know that that's available to you. But since we're just keeping this simple, we've got 2015, 2016, we want to add 2017. There we go, go to 2018. There it is again, we just simply do add. And so this part's pretty simple. And we just want to make sure that we've got all the data in there that we want, all the ranges covered. So now it doesn't all fit in there. So we can use our little elevator car here, or our scroll bar, to be able to see if we have 2015 at the top all the way down to 2019. And we do. And if you accidentally got two 2017s or two 2018s, you just select one like that, and then you can delete that particular one. But we're not going to do that. So here we go. We've got all those. We've got these boxes selected, and we're already on our master sheet. It took us there. So we do OK. And there it is. So there's all the data from 2015, 16, 17, 18, and 19. And if we took the time to go back, and we don't need to, we'd see that all those numbers are correct. Now, here's something that I was looking at earlier. When you have all this selected and you drag one over like that, it kind of, oh, sorry, so let me just try that again. Back. I'm going to do this trick. All right, so everything's selected. So if I want to make this one a little bit bigger, notice it did it to all of them. That's kind of cool, including this one. So if I want to just get it just right, the way that I like it, the data, I can do it this way. And then I can just click away to get it like this, and then simply just go back to this one and double click on it, and it's going to open it to the widest point. So there we go. So here's all of our data, and it's all consolidated on a master sheet. Well, that's pretty cool. But what of that? So we'd have to look and say, well, 2015 was a little lower than 2016, which was higher than 2017, and so on and so forth. We got all these numbers in there. Maybe there's a way where we can actually represent that data visually that might be a little easier to see. And we don't want to have a great big chart over here, so there's something called sparklines that we can do. And in your handbook, it'll tell you to come over here to I3, and we're going to select that box, and now we want to insert a sparkline. And of course, you're probably thinking all we're going to do is go to the Insert tab, and you'd be right. Go past the add-ins, the charts, down here to sparklines. And so the one we're going to work with first is the line sparkline. So we're going to go ahead, and it says right there, it's a little mini chart. We're going to click on that. And it's going to say, aha, well, what's your data range? Well, with a little experience, we could say, well, we want C3 through G3. And that's just C3 with a colon and a G3. And hit enter, and we're done. But the easy way is to left click on C3, drag down. And you see as we're dragging, you can see down here in the Create Sparklines dialog box that it's following along. So once we get C3 through G3, we can let go, and that's the one we want, and we click OK. And now we have something represented there. All right, so again, 2015 was 11%, 2016 was 4 percentage points higher. So we can see that it's gone up from 2015 to 2016, then down to 2017, and up just a little bit to 2018 from 9 to 10, and then up pretty sharply to 21% in 2019. Well, we now have a contextual tab ribbon called Sparklines, and we've got our styles here. So we can do some pretty cool things right away. We can pick one of these, and well, first what we're going to do is we can go in here and say marker color. What's that? So the high point, maybe we want the high point to be red. All right. Select red. Maybe we want the low point to be green. So we could select that color so it stands out. Maybe we want the sparkling color to be something totally different. So how about like a dark blue? Maybe that would stand out pretty good. And then we can go to our styles here and we can start clicking on these ones, or once we've selected one, we should be able to hover over it. My computer's slow, it's not doing it, but that's okay. We'll just pick a general one. How about this one here? All right, and we can select markers that go all the way down, and then we can go in and change the marker colors for the highest point, the lowest point, so on and so forth. You have a number of different options that you can do. And I think what I'll do is the marker colors, the markers themselves, let's go ahead and make those yellow just so they look different. Yellow, I said yellow. So now we have the lowest point is red, the highest point is green, and sure enough, we look at the third one, which would be 2017, is 9, and the highest one is G, which is 21%. So that's pretty cool. So now that we have it a way that we like looking at it, and again, you can change all of this stuff in numerous different ways. Spend hours doing that, but we're not going to do that. And then we come back here, we get our little Blackmagic plus sign, and I simply drag it down across the next two supplies, and the classroom supplies and custodial supply categories. And by doing that, it's kind of copied the formula down there. And so sure enough, look at this last one, we can see 14 down to 10, then up to 19. That's exactly what it's doing. Then down to 14, up to 22, and there it is. So that's just a visual way to see data represented in a small little area. It's called a sparkline. All right. And then there's one more way that might be helpful to us. It's a type of sparkline, but let's see what it is. Go back to insert. Instead of a line sparkline, we could do a column sparkline. And what's the data range? Again, I can type in C3 through G3, and I'm going to just do that right now. Not case sensitive. C3, and then I do my colon mark, and then G3. And so we select OK, and there it is. It's gone all the way across. And again, if we want our the highest point to be green, because we want that to stand out, and then maybe the low point, what were we doing? We were doing red, it looks like. Let's go back and do it red, and then that will stand out. And in this case, that would actually be helpful because this is so tiny. It's kind of hard to distinguish between 9 and 10%, but because it's colored differently, that makes it easier. Then we could do the Blackmagic plus sign, drag it down, and there we go. So we've just used spark lines, two different kinds, to represent visually our data that we have consolidated using the consolidate feature on a master tab. So that's pretty cool. And that's the extent of that exercise right there. So that's the end of what we're going to be doing in this particular workbook, the Consolidate and Sparkline. So we're going to go ahead and hit the X. And again, I do not want to save it because I want to keep this clean for another time if I want to practice with that. And then the next thing we're going to be working on is the one that we had open before, which is the Mr. J's Advanced Excel Exercises, October 2019. So go ahead and double click on that. And we're going to check out the VLOOKUP feature. And so what we have for you is we have one that's already done, and we're going to show you how that works and how somebody might use it, in this case at a school site. And then we're going to go ahead and create one. So since we just opened this up, if we didn't save it before, it should open you right up to enrollment by date. And so what we want to do is we want to find the a student ID number for a name that will stand out and we can remember as we check out this VLOOKUP feature. And I kind of like number 20 here is Rocky Winthrop. What a great pretend name. All right. And so what we want is we want to copy Rocky Winthrop's student ID number in this VLOOKUP exercise. So I simply just select the cell and then right click and then copy it. And I now have that number. Well, let's see. So now we're going to want to go to the VLOOKUP page. And apparently someone put in this number here and it showed us Sabah Acosta. So I'm gonna click on that. That's just a number. This is the ID number and here's the name. But if I click on cell B2 in this case, we see this very large formula. Again, that's covered in your handbook. but it's the VLOOKUP function, and then some different information in here that we'll go over in a little bit. But what all that is doing is, if you go up here and you put in a new number, in this case, we're going to paste the number for Rocky. We do that, and then we're going to see that that name comes up. So again, is this something that you would actually use at your site? Would you want to be able to just say, hey, what's your student ID number? And then just type it in and their name pops up. But you could imagine that you could set it up so a whole bunch of other things pop up, whatever, information that's on that giant spreadsheet that you want to be there. But for this one, it illustrates the point pretty clearly that you can set it up to, in this case, show what the name is. You could also do it in reverse, where you could simply say, what's your name? And you type in Rocky Winthrop, and then your section, or not your section, your student ID number would pop up. Maybe that would be helpful. But that's an example of how the VLOOKUP works. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to go back to the enrollment by date worksheet where we started. And we're going to do a VLOOKUP. We're going to set it up. And when we do that, we are going to, first of all, I want to get the dancing green ants to stop. So I just double click anywhere else and it will clear that. And then over here to the right, and let's see if I can drag over to see it. And then maybe hit that arrow there a little bit so we can see it. So here we go. We have a couple of fields here. And in M, I'll click on it. And up here we see this is M5. In M5, we have the ID number. That's all it is. It's just a label. It's a header. It's a data label. And down here in M6, we just have the word name. And it's kind of like what we just saw on that other page. So we want to create a formula right here in N6 that when you put in a number up here, the name will appear, just like we saw before. So how do we go about doing that? So make sure you have selected N6. And then the next thing we're going to do is ask you to open up your handbook, your PDF handbook, and we're going to follow the example that's in here just to illustrate. Well, one, this is fairly complex. You want to make sure you get all the steps right, but just to show you that you are supported in these activities and exercises with step-by-step instructions with all the screenshots to the different things that are there. All right. And so with cell N6 selected, then let's see if I can get my book to show up at the same time. Maybe I can do this. Maybe I can't. I don't know. With Zoom open, it was working earlier. Let's see if we can do this. So it says the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to insert a function. And so if you've been to our other class, you know there's a number of ways to do that. And we're going to do that in just a second. But it's just going to go down a little bit. And when we start with this particular function, then it's going to ask us for a whole bunch of different fields to put in information. And we're going to do that in just a moment. And we're going to explain what it is we're putting in there and why. So again, we're going to go back to our worksheet, make sure that you have N6 selected. And I know that it's selected because it says it right up here. And we could go to the formulas tab ribbon, or we could just click right here on the insert function dialog box will pop open. All right. I want to put that, where should I put that? How about over here somewhere? All right. So if you've been here before, then this will look familiar to you. And since this is some of the things that I do, like in the last class, we did proper and concatenate and sum. And so those are sitting up there, the most recently used. But if you haven't gotten to a VLOOKUP before, how do you find it? Well, you just simply go up here and you do V with an L. Oh, it's going to do that silly thing. I don't know why they have these screen tips in some boxes and some fields. You got to get rid of it first before you can type over it. So just a V and an L. And if we hit go, maybe it'll take us straight to that. And sure enough, it does. Again, the V stands for vertical because we're looking through a column and we're just looking up something. So that's the one that we want. And if we look down here, it has an explanation of what it is. It shows you the syntax of how it goes together. And a little explanation, but if you spend any time with functions and formulas, you will recognize that it doesn't always make sense to us people that aren't dealing with databases and programming and doing all that. But that's the one we want. So if it's selected in blue like that and we hit OK, then we're going to get started. Our VLOOKUP functions argument dialog box pops open. And sure enough, it looks like just like the one that's in the handbook. And be nice if I had a hard copy up here. I could, and I just might do this. Did you know, let's see, I'm going to get out of here real quick. If you click on your page so that this is active, you should be able to hold down your Windows key between the Control and the Alt on the bottom left-hand side of your keyboard. If you hold down the Windows key and then you tap your right arrow, you can throw whatever it is that you have open at that time over to the right. And once it's there, you can use your scroll bar to move things around and find what you want. And in 2013, nothing would have changed over here except for whatever was open would still be open. But I've noticed since we're using 2016, this is my home computer, my home office. Since I'm using 2016, they kind of do it differently now, and that's pretty cool. And it's saying, hey, which of all these things do you want to see? Well, dadgummit, it's right there. It's my handbook. So I just simply click on that, and it automatically puts it in on half of the page. And in fact, you can go between the two. If you get it just in the right spot, you get a left-right arrow, and we can squeeze things down a little bit. We could shrink what's in there, whatever, and then we could move this one over a little bit, give it a little bit more room. Then we're going to use our scroll bar over here, and there we go. Well, let's try that a little more. Boom. There we go. So now we can see our formula bar. We can see where we're working. We have N6 selected, and all we did before is go up to the insert functions little shortcut right here, and it popped open this insert function dialog box, and we typed in a VLOOKUP and found that. And once we selected it, then it opened up the I'm going to put that down here, maybe make some room. So the functions argument box for VLOOKUP function. All right, so lookup value. Let's get started. So it says lookup value N5. Let's think about that for a minute. N5. That's right here. This is the one we're looking up. So again, when we put in the student ID number for Rocky Winthrop, then it's going to kick out his name down below. So that's what N5 is. So I can type in N5, or I can just click on N5 at this point, and there it is. And then table array, A2 through D7 or D473. All right. So A2 is, I'm not going to go over there, but you remember that's where we had the section numbers was in the first column, which happens to be the A column. And then A2, because A1 is actually a header that says student ID number. And then all the way over to D, D is just the full name. And the reason it says 473 is because that's how many students are in it. So we're just simply creating a range. So we can click in the table array and we can type that out. We can say A2, and then we do colon. And again, it's not case sensitive, so you can just do it like this. And then D473. And so this will be the first time I'm going to share this tip with you. If you're setting up a VLOOKUP at the beginning of the school year, and then 10 more people join your school, you no longer have 473 students or 473 rows in this worksheet. You're going to have 10 more, so it'll be 483. So just to cover your bases, we can always add extra spaces. So I'm simply just going to say 500, or I can say 700, I can say 1,000, but I'm just going to do 500 to illustrate the point. And so what we've done is we've just set up the range so that we have all of the student numbers of as many students that it could possibly be there. And again, what is D? That's the full name. That's like Rocky Winthrop. All right. So the next one says 4. That just refers to the simple fact that the names are in column 4, which happens to be D, A, B, C, D. So we put number 4 there. All right. And then the range lookup. This gets a little confusing as far as what does it mean or why. False is what we have to write there. So again, not case sensitive, but you do have to spell it right. And before you hit anything, just make sure it's spelled right. So what we've done is we've basically just set up with this function here and with this range here, we've just told it when we put in a number here, we want, right here's where our formula is, we want all of these things to happen. We want to access that, that range, and we're going to find out what the name of that person is. And that's just how you do it. And so it's a little bit confusing, and I apologize for that. But this is VLOOKUP, and this is the general way of how you set it up. And this was the best way we came up with to be able to share that with you. So once you have everything the same as what's in your handbook, and you're using this enrollment by date worksheet, and everything's in there right. And again, we added, kind of padded the cells. We added some extra ones in case we had more students down the road. And then you hit OK. All right. And if you've spent any time with formulas, when you see this symbol here, something's not working. Well, we know it's not working because we don't have actually a student number up top. And so the formula can't produce an answer there. So what I'm going to do is, let's see if I can pull this down because my Zoom windows are in the way. And then I am going to see if I can go back to where I was before. That's too big. I'm going to make it a little smaller. I have to make room for my Zoom windows, and that looks like we're just about right. Okay, so let's go get a number. We could start off with the Rocky Winthrop one. Again, here's column 4. That's where the full names. So we could just simply copy that number, or if we remember it, we could do it that way. And then go over here, and if we select that cell, right click, and we paste that number, then we can see Rocky Winthrop shows up. And if we want to just go find another one, and I apologize that we're going back and forth on this. Actually, here's a great idea. How about I do this? E, F, G, H, I, J, K. And we'll do all the way to J. Let's go ahead and go to our data tab ribbon, and we go down here and let's group that together and then shrink that group. Aha, that makes it a little easier. Okay, so then we can go find another student over here. Let's, how about Tanez Altamimi? That sounds like a good one. Right click on there. I'm going to copy that one, come over here, right click and paste it. And now we have that name. So now you see how this works as far as setting up the VLOOKUP. And again, maybe finding a name associated with a student number isn't the best example. If you guys actually use VLOOKUP at your site, again, I would love to hear about a real world example, and we'll start teaching that in our courses. But this is one that we came up that just simply illustrates the point of VLOOKUP. All right, so that covers VLOOKUP. Next one we're going to do is watch window. And for this one, we're going to want to go to the total enrolled students tab down here. And I apologize, this is not wide enough to be able to see everything there, so I'm going to make that a little bit wider. Okay, so watch window. This is a very simple thing to do that allows you to be able to see if things are changing, or keep an eye on something, if you will, no matter where you are in your workbook. So no matter which one you're clicking on, as you go back and forth in your workbook, you'll still be able to see something. So let's take a look here. So in your handbook, what it will tell you, the first thing you want to do is you want to select L6, and it happens to be the number of the students in this pretend school, 472. All right, and so once we have that selected, the next thing you're going to want to do is go to the Formula tab ribbon, and then from there, it's going to ask us to go down here to the Formula Auditing group, and then click on Watch Window. There it is. We can put it wherever we want, and it's going to stay there until we move it. All right, so what are we looking at here? We want to keep an eye on the total number of students, and so to be able to do that, we have to set it up in this little window to do that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say Add Watch. All right, and then this little Add Watch dialog box opens up, and let's take a look at what it says. So again, this is like a formula, right? So total enrolled students, where did we see that? That's the name of this worksheet. All right, and then we have the $L and the $6, L6. There we go, L6. So this is the one that we're dealing with. So that's exactly what we want, and we simply say add. And now we have it here. So let's take a look at what we have in this box. And so like most things in a Windows environment, you can stretch things around. You can go up here and we'll say, okay, what's the book? Mr. J's Advanced Excel Exercise. That's just the entire workbook. Don't need to see that. We can shrink it back down. What's this one? Total enrolled students. Okay, that's our that's the name of our worksheet that we're in. All right, don't need to see that either. Actually, all we really need to see is the value right here, 472, because that's what we're keeping our eye on. In this example, we just want to make sure that if something happens, maybe the role that you have at your site is when there's a new student that comes in, you have to do X, Y, and Z. So maybe you want a watch window that opens up at this. It could be a watch window for any data on any worksheet. You simply select it as we just did. So what is this and how does it work? Well, I'll show you. Right now we're on total enrolled students worksheet. So I'm going to use my little trick again, Control, and do my page up. And as I go through my workbook, you'll notice the watch window stays in the same place. And again, if I decide to move it over to here or attach it to a wall, the same thing. Control, and I do page down. As I sort of scroll through the entire workbook, that watch window stays open. So that's exactly what it seems like. Nothing fancy. It's just simply a watch window where you can keep an eye on data. So just to show you that it does in fact work and that it's set up this way, if I come over here and I just say all the students from 16 down to 29, I'm going to hit delete because all of those students just left the school. We watch up here in L6 where it says total number of students. It's going to change as soon as I hit delete. Now there's 558 that are at the school, and it shows us in the watch window. So presumably if someone was making this change and you were way over here in a different worksheet, your watch window's open, you're going to be able to see it. So it's as simple as that. So we don't want to erase and get rid of our students. So I'm going to go ahead and bring them back. Brings up the value. There it is. How do you get rid of a watch window? You hit the X. You're good. All right. So the next thing that we're going to cover is the visual representation of formulas, where data sources are coming from, or where a particular cell is sending data to for a formula somewhere else. So if we are on our formulas tab ribbon and we want to find out, for example, right here where a total number of students, in fact, we can see the formula for this, equal sign count, there's the function. And what is it counting? A2, because A1 is a header, A2 through A700, all right? And again, if we go down to Control End, it'll take us down to the end where Sarah Zuniga is. And even though that range we saw went to 700, there's nothing else to count down here. So that's how that works. So Control Home, get all the way back, 472, there's the formula for that. And so if we're on the Formulas tab ribbon and we come over to here, Trace Precedence, and if we hover over that, it tells us what it's doing, but we just click on it. And so basically, all of the student numbers represented in column A, when they are counted up, that tells you the total number of students. That's how this formula is set up. And so by tracing precedence, what's coming to this spot to feed this formula and give it which fields of data are supporting that number. And then there's one more thing we can do. There's trace dependence. All right, well, what does that mean? Well, over here in students divided by 19 classrooms, 470 students, 72 students. If I click on this, we'll see that the formula, quite simple one, is L6, that's where our number of students is, divided by 19, the number of classrooms. And so we have that number 24.8 is what it works out to. And then down here, it says the formula is the number of students divided by 18 teachers. And so the average of the classes for all 18 teachers will be 26.2. And so from this single field where we collect L6, by simply doing trace precedence and trace dependence, we can see where data is coming from for the formula and where that data is then going for another formula. So just a visual representation of that. So how do we get rid of those? Just remove arrows and bam, they're gone. All right, and if we go to the Home tab ribbon, there's some things that we can do to be able to see this data and make it a little easier to deal with. If you come to our other class, you know that if things are scrunched in and you can't quite see things, or maybe you don't have all the room for the schools or something, you can always select between those and select everything, and then simply double click, and ones like I will actually spread out so you can actually see that it says entry code. That's pretty interesting, so we can do that. But maybe it's hard to follow. We get the number here or the name, and we're going across here. There's got to be better ways to be able to see this, and there is. So what we're going to do is we're on the Home tab ribbon, and we go over here to the Styles group, and it says Format as a Table. And so we click on that, and now we have some options. And so we can select on any one of these that we want to, and it's going to ask us about the data. What is it we want to use? And so basically it's saying A1 through L474, and that's fine. That's what we're going to do for our table. And yes, we have headers. And so we're going to say, okay, so now we have this particular style set up like that. And maybe that's not the style that we want. And because we're in a hypercar and we have all these amazing tools, we can now just hover over any one of these to see which one we like, which one's going to show that data the best. And so to me, something like that might be the better one to do. There's a couple different versions of that. Maybe click this one here. And there we go. And so now it's easy if we're trying to follow Leon or Liz all the way across, we know we stay on that blue line and we can get there. And then when we get to the table design contextual tab ribbon, then we have access to a whole bunch of other things that we can do. And if you want to just check out what's happening, like what's a banded column, click on it. Every other column is now selected with color blue. Not the best idea, so maybe we'll not do that. We can just do a number of different things. But one of the best parts of this, making this big table like this, is now if I come over here and I want to, let's see, first of all, let's make it so we can actually see the lettering there. Go up to the lettering, should be able to make that dark like black or something so it stands out a little bit better. Or we could have picked any color that we wanted. But here we go. If we want to do some sorting, we already have our little buttons here. So now we can say, oh, we want to only see second and third graders. Bam. Now only second and third graders are going to be there. And if we go back up here and say, well, let's put it in alphabetical order, or in this case, the second graders first, followed by the third graders, we could do that. In fact, if we want to do multiple compounding sorts, we could do that. So here's just some tricks of what you could do with a large worksheet where you have all this data and it's kind of hard to trace your eyes across the screen. So that does that and allows you to be able to find stuff easier. All righty. So in the amount of time that we have left, we are now going to do a little bit of exploring in the pivot tables. All right. So this is a table, and as we can see, sure, we were able to, easily sort some things. We have some different options. We can filter some things by simply using these little buttons up here at the top. And that's pretty cool. And plus we can change the colors anytime we want to. Let me get away from that by simply just hovering over it and change it to whatever way we want to. That's pretty cool. But at the end of the day, this is just a table. And yes, there are some things that we can do with that table, but it'll never be a pivot table. All right, so we're going to be turning this into a pivot table, or said differently, I'm going to use the data that's on this particular worksheet to include in a pivot table. And we're going to demonstrate how we can change all the data around. We can move rows, we can move columns, we can change a whole bunch of things, but it's very complex. So let's see if we can come up with a good example here. So, all right, so let's make a pivot table. So here we are on enrollment by date, and I just happen to have my select a cell up at the top. I always like to do that when I'm doing my next whatever it is I'm working on, just so I don't accidentally start doing something just to a small spot. Generally, the machine learning is going to say, oh, he wants to deal with all of this down here. So that's what we're going to do. So we want to make a pivot table. What's the first thing we got to do? Well, we need to go up to the Insert tab and the very first group, Tables. So we can make a pivot table. We can make a regular table. We did that before on the Shade Every Other Row tab. Or we could get a recommended one. Maybe it's going to help us figure out. And we look at the screen tip, it says, want us to recommend pivot tables that summarize your complex data? Click this button to get a customized set of pivot tables. In other words, it's going to give you multiple that you can look at. And so I think that's a really good way to do that. But before I click on that, I just want you to remember where we are. In fact, we're not where we need to be. Sorry, forgot about column A. So column A, student numbers, last name, first name, full name, all the way down, and we have entry descriptions, we have last school name, last school grade. Maybe we want our pivot table to be all the way to J and all the way down to the end, but we don't want K and L. Something to think about. So here we are, we're going to get started. We're on the Insert tab ribbon, and we're going to go to Recommend Pivot Table. And now we see our dancing green ants. And if I took the time to scroll down, we'll go all the way down to Sarah Zuniga at the end, and we see that it's including K and L. All right. So first things first, we have several suggestions here. And when you click on them, it'll give you like a little larger view of whatever it's suggesting. And we're going to go over those in just a minute. All right. But down at the bottom, I want you to notice something. And this is one of a couple places where you're able to do this, but it says change source data. So again, when you set up a table, or in this case, a pivot table, you have 472 or 73 students, whatever the number is right now. But what happens if 10 more kids show up in the next couple of months? You don't want to have to make a whole new pivot table just to accommodate them. So we can do some change source data things right now. And also, we're not interested in columns K and L that you see over on the right, because last school name and last school grade is not information that we're typically accessing. So let's go ahead and change the source. So the first thing we see is, we'll take a look at this, enrollment by date. That's the name of this worksheet. Good, that's what we want. And then we see A1 through, notice the colon there, L474. And sure enough, there's L and there's K, and 474, that's the limit down at the bottom for the last student, if you're including the header that's at the top. So first thing I want to do is I want to change that L to a J, because I don't want to have this last part here. So I'm just going to go in there and I'm going to click, and where the L is, I'm going to go backspace, and then I'm just going to put a J in there. And it's not case sensitive, so I just left it low. I'm going to erase the 474, and I'm going to replace it with 700, because we don't know if we're going to get 100 new students or what. We just want to make sure we cover it. So there it is. We're going to go from A1 all the way over to J and all the way down to 700, just to accommodate any new students that may show up. Okay, so we just changed the data source, no big deal. So now we're back to the recommended pivot tables. Let's take a look at what it says. It says count of full name by entry code. Okay, we saw entry codes are over there in this column right here. I don't remember what all those entry codes are, so that's not looking like what I want. But count the full name, there's the total number of students, 473. So something's working. Let's check out the next one. And again, I'm not sure why this keeps getting small on me. Let's make it bigger. This one is count the full name by entry description. Okay, so this is a little more interesting, maybe a little more promising. And again, this is just a launching point. Once we open it up, as you saw before, we can click and unclick and change anything we want. But here we are, we've got enter from charter school. That's one student. Don't know if it's male or female, but one did that. From InfoSnap, 1. 9 came from out of the district, 26 from out of state, and so on and so forth. There's the data. Let's take a look at what some of the other ones are. Sum of grade level. Is there any reason on earth we'd ever want to add up the grade levels? Of course not. And so it seems like the further we go down in the recommendations, the less things make sense. And so no big deal. As a starting point, we're just going to click the second one. because that's something that we can deal with. We can at least kind of understand what we're seeing at this point. So that's a great place to start. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. All right, so here we are. We have our pivot table. And just so you know, when we're in our pivot table or have a cell selected here, our pivot table fields box over here, window pane, if you will, opens up. If I click anywhere else, it disappears. How do you get it back? Click anywhere on your pivot table and we get this back. Also, we're in the pivot table analyze contextual tab ribbon. All kinds of options here. And look at that, change data source. If at this point we wanted to do it, we could do it there. And then there's the design part where we could actually check out all these different ways to look at it. Maybe one of them will look better than another. Obviously, not all of them are going to work. And so we might want to pick one of those. In fact, let's go ahead and pick one. How about, that one's not too busy. What about, I think we'll go with that one right there. That might work. Easy to see our labels at the top. Okay, so again, same data that we saw before in the example. Enter from charter school, 1. Enter from InfoSnap, 1, and so on and so forth. So let's take a look over here. Pivot table fields. So we have the full name is selected and the entry description. All right, and what of that? Down here, it's counting the full names. If we click on that box, we could actually go and we could change the value field setting to where it sums it up, it adds it up. We saw in those other examples. Of course, that's not what we want to do. So count the full name works pretty good. We could do that. We could, instead of full name, what if we did student number? So we're counting the student number, but right now it's trying to add it all up. So we'd have to go to student number and go in and change the value thing and change it back to count and do it that way. And so now we have a count of the full name, count of student numbers. They're exactly the same. So interesting. So we could just go to the full name one and get rid of it. That simple. All right. So let's take a look over here what we have. Again, we don't know if this one student entering from charter school is male or female. So maybe we want to come over here and we want to add gender. So let's go ahead and just click the box of gender. So this isn't quite as easy to see as we want it to be, but let's just take a look real quick. So enter from charter school, 1, and then males, 1. In fact, there's no females listed there, so we know it's a male. And sure enough, this one's male. And down here, enter from out of district is 9. 3 of them are female, and 6 of them are male to make up that 9. Now, I know what you're thinking, Mr. J, that's ridiculous. Why on earth would I want it to look like that? That is so hard to follow, and you are absolutely right. So here's where the power shows up. So gender right now is in rows. We can see it over here. The entry description and gender is in rows. And we don't have anything up here in the column. So what if we just go left click on gender and drag it up the column and let it go? So now we see something that makes a little more sense. And we can see that enter from charter school is 1 and it's a male. And then over there, we got 6 males and 3 females making up the enter from out of district and so on and so forth. Okay, that's a little more promising. Maybe we want to use our tools and go over here, and maybe if we go back to, let's see where it's going to let us do that. We might have to go all the way back to our home tab ribbon and then maybe put those in the middle so it goes like that, or maybe in this case, squeeze them over to the right so it's a little bit easier to see. And then maybe we just want to take this and make it a little bit smaller because we just want to be able to see that data right there. Here's our blanks. Let's go take a look at blanks. Why do we have blanks in here? See if we can find where the blanks are. Okay, they're not in there. We'd have to go find wherever the blank ones are, and we could get rid of that and make it disappear. I'm not going to spend the time to do that right now, except for I'm just going to shrink that down a little bit and move it over. Okay, so this makes it a little bit easier to see, but what of this? Mr. J, that's great. You made the headers kind of black color. You have entry descriptions here. You got male, female. We've got some data, but big deal. That's just some data there. Here's where it gets really interesting. So if your principal says, hey, we need to know all of the students that are entering from out of the district, I need a list of all those students. Well, we know there's 3 female and there's 6 male, total of 9, but who are they? In a pivot table, you simply double click, drill down, and watch what happens. Down here, by the way, I forgot to mention this, we started right here and we went up to insert and we said recommend a pivot table. And when we clicked and accepted the pivot table, it kicked out a whole brand new sheet just to the left. And we could name that right now if we wanted to, but there it is. So watch what happens when I try to figure out who these 9 that entered from out of district. I double click, it's going to create a whole new sheet. All right, and there they are. If I go up here and I use my tricks to spread things out so it's easier to see. So now we have all 9 that are there. And if at this point we wanted to just filter it out and just say, hey, we want to just have, you know, the males or whatever, then you could do that and we could shrink it down and we just show the males. Because now we have this table thing that we're familiar with that we've seen before, and we can do that. But it's a pivot table. So what if principal says, hey, we need to know all the females that are coming from out of state. There's 14 of them. There's your list. Oh, but wait, we only want the 3rd and 4th graders because we have to have them fill something out. We just deselect all, say 3rd and 4th, click OK. There they are, that quick. So what we see is starting with all this data, we create a pivot table, which is adjustable in any number of ways. We can move columns to rows, rows to columns, back and forth, and then it's represented over here. And then we can simply drill down if we want to see all 64 students that, or maybe all 43 males that initial enrollment K-12, double click on it and it kicks out another one, and they're all there, all the way down. So just from this one pivot table with infinite amount of adjustability of what we're going to see, we can click on it and do all of that. Pretty cool. And then once we have this, and we go up here to our our pivot table analyze, we can then go over here and we can create a pivot chart. And then a chart, we can pick whatever kind we want. Not all of them will make sense. Maybe this one would be a good one. We can do it 3-dimensional if we want to, and say, okay, that sounds good. And once that happens, then we have a whole new contextual tab ribbon that allows us to do all kinds of stuff. We go to design, we can maybe make it look this way, and we can start adjusting things. And again, as we saw in the very first example, if we want to get rid of some of the data that's in here, we can simply click on stuff and say, well, all we want is from out of district, out of state, you know, something like that. Click OK. And not only is your pivot chart representing just that data that quickly, but it also affects your pivot table. And if I come back over here to the pivot table and I say, all right, that's great, but we also want initial enrollment and maybe those ones there. And not only does it change it here, but now it changes it over there. So what you see in pivot tables and pivot charts is almost an infinite way of describing the data, moving it around, seeing what it is. And at any time, if you want to know who those students are, you just drill down by double clicking and it produces a table with just that information. So there's the power of pivot tables in a very simple, a simplistic, I should say, example. In our intro class, we use formulas and function to take names out of different columns and make it last name, comma, space, first name. And then we have another one where we take the full names and split it out. And we use these very large formulas that do that. And they're fairly complex and cumbersome perhaps, but there's a much easier way to do that. So I'm going to use my control down page, and I'm going to get down to where it says flash fill 1. There we go. All right. So again, using the concatenate function and then the proper function in a separate formula, we can make all of these proper case with the first letter being capitalized, and then we can put it in the last name, comma, space, first name orientation by using functions and formulas. Well, this is a flash fill exercise, so check this out. I simply select G1 where I want to do this, and I'll give myself a little bit more room. Without any formulas or functions whatsoever, I simply put it in the form that I want. In this case, Gable, and yes, I just capitalized that because I want it to do that. So there's Gable, comma, space, and the first name is Clark. And I'm not going to hit enter until I come back up here and I examine and make sure that I have everything spelled correctly. Because if you make a mistake and you hit enter and then you come back and you change it, machine learning is not going to be able to follow what you're doing. It doesn't understand. And so did I make Gable proper case? I absolutely did. And you can do that. And then I put a comma and a space and all that. Great. So once it's spelled the same way with the changes, in this case, uppercase and then a space with a comma, once it's where I want, I just hit enter and I go down to the next one. And so now we're going to do Gardner, and it happens to be a capital G. And it already thinks we're doing something, but that's not what we want. So I do the next letter of Gardner. And of course, when I get to the third letter of Gardner, that's different than Gable. So as soon as I tap that R, watch what happens. Tap. It instantly figures out what the heck we're doing. And that's exactly right. I want to accept it. I just hit enter. And now they're all there. And notice, no matter which one I click on, there are no formulas, no functions involved. And again, if you came to our intro class, you know that we have to then copy and paste special to get rid of those formulas so that we can get rid of other columns that those formulas are using as cell references. So there's that quick. And you'll notice that here in column F, we have Gable, Turner, Bogart, McCall, and Townsend all had lowercase. By simply changing it in the first one, Gable, to uppercase, it fixed every single last name, first letter, made it a proper case. But you'll notice that Carrie and Lana and Lauren haven't been fixed. Why? Because when we typed in Clark, it was already capitalized. So we haven't shown it anything new in machine learning, in this case, flash fill, to do that. So we'll click down here where the first one that's lowercase that we want to fix. We click on it, come up here and put my cursor in there and then backspace. And then I make it a capital C. And again, make sure I haven't made any mistakes, that it's spelled correctly so I don't confuse machine learning. And once I have that, I just simply hit enter. And now Lana, Lauren, and who was it? Pete, can't remember. All of those names are now capitalized. So again, we just did the work of two different formulas that we did in our earlier examples in our intro class with the concatenate and the proper functions. And we didn't have to do anything but just type it in. But wait, there's more. So I'm going to do my control down page to get to the next one, which happens to be Flash Fill 2. And by the way, that keyboard shortcut is very helpful because I have my Zoom windows down there that are blocking and I can't see it, but I know it's the next one, so I can use my keyboard shortcuts. All right, so again, the formula to do this is very large, but we don't need any formulas because we have flash fill. And again, Google doesn't do this yet. Eventually it probably will, but last name, that's simple enough. Just type out Gable. Make sure we do it right. And before I hit enter, make sure it's good. Okay, no problem. I hit enter. And Gardner, capital G. It already thinks we're doing Gable again, but we're not. And as soon as I tap that R, it knows what we're doing. That's exactly what we want. We hit enter, done. All right, is it that easy, Mr. J? You betcha. So we go over here to Clark, C-L-A-R-K. And it's important that if you make a mistake, you fix it now before you hit enter, or it's not going to know what you're doing. So then I hit enter, we go down to the next one, and Clark starts with a C, but Ava starts with an A, so I do a capital A. It instantly knows what we're doing. We hit enter, and there it is. All right, and the last, most impressive example is Flash Fill 3. Again, no formulas, no functions. So I'm going to do my control page down button, takes me to my Flash Fill 3 exercise. And so we'll take a quick look at this. If you come to our advanced Microsoft Word class, we do mail merge, we do labels and letters and all that. And to do that, we have to have a database. And in this case, it's in an Excel file that has the first and last names, and then the street address in 4 different columns, street address with city, state, and zip. And then there's a contact person. And we use this database right here for doing form letters when we're sending out letters to people. But check this out. I'm going to go over here to H2, and I want to put all of the street address, city, state, and zip, 4 different columns in a single column. And just for fun, I'm going to stretch it out so we're not struggling to see that. Maybe I can even go over just a little bit, make it easy. All right, so street address, what is it? And again, always make sure you're doing this right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, First Street. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, space, First Street. All right, I gotta go back and check and make sure it's spelled exactly like what's over here. Okay, looking good. So now I'm gonna hit a comma and a space, because typically when we write out our addresses, that's how we do it. And then the next part is gonna be in the D column, not the C column, but the D column, San Diego. So just to give you an idea, if you make a mistake, as long as I don't hit enter yet, I can go back and fix it. Clearly I made a mistake here, so I can simply just go up and say, come on, let's get it back to where it is. So in our example, there'd be a space and then there'd be a CA, and then I want to make sure I get the zip right. So it's 92001, 92001. And so again, I am trying to set up an example for machine learning to follow flash fill, right? And so I just want to make sure everything's spelled right, have it spaced the way that I want to, make sure this number's right, because I can't go back and change it after I hit return. 92001, 92001, I'm good. So I hit enter. Nothing's happened yet. The very first number of the next address is an 8. And the moment that I hit an 8, watch what happens. 8. Are you kidding me? And now I hit enter to accept it. And then if I want, I can spread this out over here. And by the way, this is our fictitious school with fictitious names. And what was the number that we had? Something like 473 students or something. I'm going to use another trick with my mouse where I hold it still. I click the mouse wheel down, get that little symbol. And then as I don't click any more buttons, but the further away I pull, the faster it goes in whatever direction I'm going. But I want to just, I'll do it about that speed. So I'm taking my hand off the mouse altogether, and it's automatically scrolling that little trick by simply clicking the mouse wheel as a button straight down. And it does that, it allows you to be able to look at stuff. So why am I doing this? In an instant, the moment I hit that number 8, machine learning instantly figured out what we were doing. I hit enter, and for 473 students, their addresses are now written out in the format that we want. No formulas, no functions. That's incredible. And whether we're dealing with 500 rows of data that we want machine learning flash fill to fix and do something for us without formulas and functions, or 5,000 rows or 50,000 rows, it doesn't matter, because it will do it all, because machine learning is that smart. So that is very helpful. If you at your site, they're doing a lot of things in Google Sheets now. And if you have something that you can't figure out the formula, do it first in Excel, not with a formula, but with flash fill, and see if you can make it work. And then you can just copy and paste that data over into the Google Sheet, if that happens to be these again. So thank you for coming today. We appreciate it. You all are awesome. And happy holidays to you all.